The mining vessel Horizon's Edge drifted through the asteroid field like a metal whale hunting for krill. Captain Sarah-chan watched the scanner displays with tired eyes, searching for anything valuable enough to justify another month in this godforsaken corner of space. Her crew of 12 had been out here for 6 weeks, and their cargo holds remained stubbornly empty. "Captain, we're picking up something unusual on long-range sensors," called out Marcus Webb, her navigation officer. The young man's voice carried an edge of excitement that had become rare on these extended mining runs. Sarah pushed herself away from her coffee cup and moved to the sensor station. The holographic display showed a faint energy signature about 2 clicks away, nestled in the shadow of a massive asteroid. It wasn't the steady pulse of a mineral deposit or the chaotic scatter of debris. This signal felt different, almost organic. "Could be a derelict ship," suggested Dr. Elena Vasquez, the expedition's xenobiologist. She had joined them for this run hoping to find new microbial life in the asteroid belt's ice pockets. "The energy pattern doesn't match any known mineral formations." "Or it could be a trap," muttered Chief Engineer Rodriguez from his position at the engine controls. The scarred veteran had seen too many pirates use fake distress signals to lure in unsuspecting miners. Sarah studied the readings carefully. The signal was weak but consistent, like something trying to conserve power. After a moment, she made her decision. Plot an intercept course. Keep the weapons powered but not targeted. Let's see what we're dealing with. The Horizon's Edge changed course, its fusion drives pushing them toward the mysterious signal. As they drew closer, the asteroid field seemed to grow more dense and treacherous. Jagged rocks tumbled past their viewports, some large enough to crush their ship if they weren't careful. "There!" Webb pointed at his screen. "Visual contact." The main display flickered to life, showing a sight that made everyone on the bridge fall silent. Wedged between 2 massive asteroids was a ship unlike anything in human records. It measured roughly 80 meters in length, with a hull that seemed to shift between metallic gray and deep purple depending on the angle of observation. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly with bioluminescent light. "That's definitely not human technology," whispered Dr. Vasquez, her scientific curiosity overriding any concern for safety. "Look at those hull patterns. They're not manufactured, they're grown." The alien vessel showed clear signs of damage. Gaping holes in its biometallic hull leaked atmosphere in frozen clouds. Debris floated around it in a slowly expanding sphere, suggesting the ship had been here for some time. "I'm detecting a faint life sign," reported their medical officer, Dr. James Park. "Whatever's on that ship, it's still alive but barely." Captain Chen felt her pulse quicken. First contact protocols were clear: any discovery of alien life had to be reported immediately to the Galactic Council. But the nearest communication relay was 3 days away, and whatever was on that ship might not last that long. Captain Webb's voice was tight with concern. "I'm reading massive structural damage to their ship. The life support systems are failing. Whatever's in there has maybe 6 hours of air left, if that." Sarah found herself at a crossroads that would define not just her career, but possibly humanity's future relationship with an unknown species. The safe play was to maintain distance, document everything, and wait for proper authorities. The human play was something entirely different. "Prep the shuttle," she ordered. "Dr. Vasquez, Dr. Park, you're with me. Rodriguez, monitor our approach from here and be ready to get us out fast if things go wrong." "Captain, with respect, this is extremely dangerous," protested Dr. Park. "We don't know anything about their biology, their diseases, or their intentions." "We know they're dying," Sarah replied firmly. "And we're the only ones in position to help. Isn't that what being human means? Taking risks to help others, even when we don't understand them?" The shuttle bay doors opened with a mechanical growl, and the small craft launched into the asteroid field. Sarah piloted them carefully between the floating rocks, using the alien ship's own hull as a windbreak from the larger debris. Up close, the damage to the alien vessel was even more apparent. Whatever had attacked it had used weapons that seemed to tear rather than blast. The hull breaches looked almost like claw marks, as if some massive predator had tried to rip the ship apart. There, Dr. Vasquez pointed to an intact section near what appeared to be the ship's stern. "That looks like it might be an airlock." The shuttle's docking clamps engaged with the alien hull, and Sarah was surprised when they held. Whatever material the ship was made from, it was tough enough to support their weight despite the obvious damage. Atmosphere reading shows their air is actually compatible with ours, Dr. Park reported, checking his instruments. Higher oxygen content, but within tolerable ranges. The real concern is biological contamination. They suited up anyway, following proper quarantine protocols despite the time pressure. The alien airlock proved surprisingly intuitive, a series of pressure plates that responded to touch in a logical sequence. As the inner door opened, they were met with a corridor that felt more like the inside of a living creature than a spaceship. The walls pulsed gently with that same bioluminescent light, providing enough illumination to see by. The air smelled of ozone and something else, something that reminded Sarah of a forest after rain. Their footsteps echoed strangely in the organic-looking passages. The life sign is coming from deeper in the ship, Dr. Park reported, consulting his medical scanner. But it's getting weaker. Whatever saliva in here is running out of time. They followed the corridors deeper into the ship, past chambers filled with incomprehensible technology that seemed to blend the biological with the mechanical. Strange symbols glowed and faded on the walls like a slow heartbeat, and Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the ship itself was somehow aware of their presence. The corridors led them to what could only be the bridge, a circular chamber with no obvious controls or displays, just smooth surfaces that pulsed with light patterns too complex to follow. And there, in the center of the room, they found their answer. The creature was massive, easily 3 meters tall even while lying on its side. Its body was covered in scales that shifted color like oil on water, and 6 powerful limbs ended in claws that could have torn through steel plate. It looked like evolution's answer to the question of what the perfect predator might be. But it was clearly dying. One of its arms hung at an impossible angle, and dark fluid pooled beneath its body. Worst of all, a metal collar around its neck sparked occasionally with electrical discharges, each pulse making the creature twitch in obvious pain. "My God," breathed Dr. Vasquez. "Look at those scars. This isn't just injured, it's been tortured." The creature's body was covered in old wounds, some surgical in their precision. Someone had clearly been conducting experiments on this being, treating it like a laboratory animal despite its obvious intelligence. The collar, Dr. Park pointed out. "It's some kind of control device. Neural inhibitor, maybe, or a pain compliance system." As if sensing their presence, the creature's eyes opened, 6 of them, arranged in pairs around its elongated head. They were deep violet, and filled with an intelligence that was unmistakably sentient. When it saw the 3 humans, something like surprise flickered across its alien features. Sarah found herself stepping forward despite every survival instinct screaming at her to run. This being could have torn her apart without effort, even in its weakened state. But something in those eyes spoke to her, a recognition of one thinking being to another. "We're here to help," she said quietly, not knowing if it could understand her words but hoping it might understand her tone. The creature watched her carefully, and Sarah could see it trying to process their presence. After a long moment, it made a sound, not quite a growl, not quite speech, but something that seemed to convey both wariness and desperate hope. "The collar has to come off," Dr. Park said, studying his medical readings. "It's interfering with its nervous system. Could be what's killing it, not just the physical injuries." Sarah looked at the massive alien being, noting how it had shifted slightly to present the collar more clearly to them. It understood what Dr. Park had said, she realized. It knew they were trying to help. Do it, she decided. But be ready to run if this goes wrong. Dr. Park approached slowly, his medical scanner in one hand and a universal cutting tool in the other. The creature remained perfectly still as he examined the collar, though Sarah could see its muscles tense with each electrical discharge from the device. "There," Dr. Park muttered, finding what looked like a release mechanism. "I think I can." And the collar fell away with a metallic clang, and the effect on the creature was immediate. Its breathing deepened, the pain twitching stopped, and its eyes grew clearer. More importantly, it began to speak. The words were in no language any human had ever heard, but the meaning was somehow clear through tone and gesture. Gratitude. Relief. And, underneath it all, a deep and abiding rage toward whoever had done this to it. Dr. Vasquez was frantically recording everything, her scientific excitement barely contained. "Captain, this is incredible. We're witnessing first contact with an obviously intelligent species." The linguistic patterns alone, her words were cut off by a new sound, the deep rumble of massive engines approaching. Through the transparent sections of the alien bridge, they could see lights moving in the asteroid field. Ships. multiple ships, and they were heading straight for them. The creature's reaction was immediate and terrifying. It struggled to its feet despite its injuries, and the sound it made was pure predatory fury. Whatever was approaching, this being knew them, and it wanted them dead. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through their comm units. "We've got company. 5 ships, unknown configuration, moving fast. They're jamming our communications and powering weapons." Sarah felt her blood run cold. Pirates were bad enough, but these ships had found the alien vessel with suspicious ease. Either they'd been tracking it, or they'd been tracking whoever had escaped from it. The creature turned to look at her, and in those violet eyes she saw something that chilled her to the bone. This being wasn't just a victim, it was a weapon. And whoever was approaching had lost control of their weapon. As the first energy blasts lit up the asteroid field outside, Sarah-chan realized that her simple rescue mission had just become humanity's first interstellar war. The alien warships moved through the asteroid field like hunting sharks, their hulls gleaming with the same biometallic sheen as the damaged vessel. But, where the rescued creature's ship had felt organic and alive, these ships radiated cold malevolence. Their surfaces were studded with weapons that seemed to writhe and shift, tracking targets with predatory patience. "Rodriguez, get us out of here." Sarah barked into her comm unit as the first energy blast seared past the alien ship's hull. "Negative, Captain. They've got us boxed in. These asteroids are too dense for a clean escape, and they're jamming our FTL drive. We're stuck until we can break their signal." The creature beside them was changing. Its scales had shifted to a deep crimson color, and its massive frame was coiling with barely restrained violence. It spoke again in its alien tongue, but this time the words carried an unmistakable tone of command and fury. "It's trying to tell us something," Dr. Vasquez said, her recorder still capturing every moment. The vocal patterns suggest tactical information. The alien being moved to what Sarah assumed were the ship's controls, placing its claws on surfaces that immediately began glowing brighter. The damaged vessel shuddered as systems that had been dormant for who knows how long began coming back online. "Incredible," breathed Dr. Park. "It's activating the ship's systems using some kind of bioneural interface. The technology is literally responding to its thoughts." Outside, the attacking ships had spread into an attack formation. Sarah counted 5 vessels, each roughly the size of a human destroyer but moving with an agility that defied their bulk. Their weapons were charging with an ominous purple glow. "Captain Chen," a voice suddenly filled the alien bridge, not through their comm units, but through the ship itself. The words were in heavily accented English, suggesting universal translators. "You will surrender the escape test subject immediately. Your interference in hegemony business will not be tolerated." The creature, their creature, Sarah found herself thinking, let out a sound that was pure savage hatred. Its claws extended fully, each one easily capable of tearing through steel, and its 6 eyes blazed with killing intent. "Test subject?" Sarah spoke aloud, directing her words to wherever the alien ship's communication system might pick them up. "You mean this intelligent being you've been torturing?" A different voice responded, colder and more mechanical. "The creature is hegemony property. It was bred for war and conditioned for obedience. Your primitive understanding of its nature is irrelevant. Return it now, or face the consequences." "Bred for war," Dr. Vasquez repeated quietly. "They created it. It's not just a captured alien, it's their own engineered soldier." The pieces fell into place with horrifying clarity. This wasn't first contact with a natural alien species. This was an encounter with the escaped creation of some galactic power that treated sentient beings as property to be owned and controlled. The creature turned to look at Sarah, and she saw something in its eyes that she recognized, the same look she'd seen in the eyes of human prisoners of war, people who'd endured unspeakable treatment but still retained their fundamental dignity and will to resist. "We're not giving you back," Sarah announced to the alien fleet. "Whatever you did to create this being, it's still a thinking, feeling individual. And humanity doesn't negotiate with slavers." The response was immediate and violent. All 5 alien warships opened fire simultaneously, their energy weapons painting the asteroid field in deadly light. But the creature was ready for them. The damaged ship moved like it was alive, because, Sarah realized, it actually was. The biomechanical hull flowed and shifted, presenting the strongest sections toward incoming fire while the creature's mental commands directed power to defensive systems that had been dormant minutes before. "This is impossible," Dr. Park stammered, watching displays that showed the ship's condition. "The damage we saw earlier, it's actually healing. The hull is regenerating." The alien vessel twisted between asteroids with impossible grace, using the massive rocks as shields while its own weapons began charging. But 5 against 1 were still terrible odds, especially for a ship that had been nearly destroyed. "Captain," Rodriguez's voice was tight with fear. "The Horizon's Edge is taking peripheral damage from their weapons spread. We need to either run or fight, and running isn't an option." Sarah made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life or the next few minutes if things went badly. "Rodriguez, target the lead alien ship. All weapons, full power." "Captain, we're a mining vessel. Our weapons are designed for breaking rocks, not do it." The Horizon's Edge opened fire with everything it had: mining lasers, explosive charges, even the magnetic grapples used for moving asteroids. Against military-grade shields, their weapons should have been useless. But the alien ships weren't expecting resistance from what they clearly considered a primitive human vessel. One of the mining lasers punched through the lead ship's shields and carved a glowing line across its hull. The damage was minimal, but the psychological effect was enormous. The hegemony fleet had just been bloodied by the very primitives they dismissed. The creature beside them let out what could only be described as a laugh, a sound like grinding metal mixed with predatory satisfaction. It spoke again, and somehow Sarah understood the meaning if not the words. "Now they know you humans have teeth." The alien being's ship was fully alive now, its biomechanical systems responding to its pilot's thoughts with fluid precision. It dove through the asteroid field like a living creature returning to its natural element, drawing the enemy ships into pursuit among the floating rocks. "It's using the asteroids as weapons," Dr. Vasquez observed in amazement. "Watch, it's calculating gravitational interactions and deliberately destabilizing their orbits." The creature was indeed turning the asteroid field itself into a weapon. A carefully placed energy blast would send a massive rock tumbling into the path of a pursuing ship, forcing the hegemony vessels to either slow down or risk collision. It was a tactic that required split-second timing and an understanding of physics that spoke to a formidable intelligence. But the aliens had advantages too. Their ships were faster, their weapons more powerful, and they clearly knew their quarry's capabilities. They began spreading out, trying to surround the damaged bioship and cut off its escape routes. "Captain," one of her crew reported from the Horizon's Edge, "we're picking up massive energy readings from one of the alien ships. They're charging some kind of main weapon." Through the alien bridge's transparent sections, Sarah could see the largest of the enemy vessels as it came to a stop relative to the asteroid field. Sections of its hull were folding back to reveal a weapon that looked like a mechanical maw lined with crackling energy projectors. The creature saw it too, and, for the first time since they'd freed it from the neural collar, Sarah saw fear in its alien features. It spoke rapidly, urgently, and, while she couldn't understand the words, the meaning was clear: that weapon could destroy everything in this entire section of the asteroid field. "It's a siege cannon," Dr. Park realized, studying the energy readings on his instruments. "They're not just trying to capture their escaped soldier, they're willing to destroy it rather than let it go free." The alien being looked at Sarah and her team, and she saw it making a decision. It moved to what she guessed were the ship's navigation controls and began inputting commands with desperate urgency. "It's trying to ram them," Dr. Vasquez breathed. "It's going to sacrifice itself to stop that weapon from firing." But Sarah had spent her entire career solving impossible problems in the depths of space. She'd navigated asteroid storms, survived reactor failures, and once kept her crew alive for 2 weeks on emergency rations when their life support failed. She wasn't about to let their first alien ally die in a futile gesture. "Rodriguez," she called through the calm, "how long would it take to rig our mining charges as missiles?" "Captain, that's crazy. Even if we could jury-rig a guidance system, those charges aren't designed for how long? 5 minutes, maybe less if we don't worry about accuracy." "Do it. And get me a firing solution on that siege weapon." Sarah turned to the alien creature, trying to communicate through gesture since words were useless. She pointed at the enemy ship, then at her own vessel, then made what she hoped was a universally understood boom gesture with her hands. The alien being studied her for a moment, then its features shifted into what she could only interpret as a smile. It was not a pleasant expression on a face designed for warfare, but it was unmistakably one of approval and, perhaps even respect. The creature's ship suddenly changed course, abandoning its suicidal charge toward the siege cannon. Instead, it began a complex evasive pattern that kept the smaller enemy ships busy while positioning itself to give the Horizon's Edge a clear shot. "Charges are ready, Captain," Rodriguez reported. "But, I have to tell you, the odds of actually hitting that thing are fire them all," Sarah ordered. "Everything we've got." The Horizon's Edge launched its entire payload of mining charges, 12 high-explosive devices normally used for breaking apart asteroids. They flew through space on ballistic trajectories, guided only by the most basic proximity sensors. The alien ships saw them coming, of course. Their point defense systems began picking off the crude missiles one by one. But 12 targets were too many to stop them all, and the hegemony gunners had never faced human mining equipment used as weapons. 3 of the charges made it through. 2 detonated harmlessly against the siege cannon's shields, but the third hit at exactly the right moment, just as the massive weapon was reaching full charge. The explosion was spectacular. The alien siege cannon's own stored energy added to the destruction, turning what should have been minor damage into a cascade failure that tore through the ship's forward sections. The vessel listed to one side, atmosphere venting from multiple hull breaches. The remaining alien ships immediately broke off their attack, moving to assist their damaged flagship. But, as they regrouped, their communications filled with angry chatter in their incomprehensible language. The creature beside Sarah spoke again, and this time its tone was different, not the fury of before, but something that sounded almost like admiration. It looked at her with those 6 violet eyes, and Sarah had the distinct impression that she was being evaluated and measured. Then, the alien being did something that surprised everyone on the bridge. It placed one massive claw gently on Sarah's shoulder, a gesture that could have killed her instantly if it had chosen to apply pressure, but instead felt strangely protective. The alien spoke, and, while the words were incomprehensible, the tone was unmistakable. It was making a promise. Or perhaps a vow. "Captain," Dr. Vasquez whispered, "I think we just made our first alien ally." Through the bridge's transparent walls, they could see the hegemony ships regrouping in the distance. The immediate threat had passed, but Sarah knew this was far from over. Humanity had just announced itself to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible, by standing up to bullies and freeing their victim. The consequences of that choice were yet to be determined. But, as Sarah looked into the alien being's eyes and saw respect where once there had been only pain and rage, she knew they had made the right decision. Whatever came next, humanity would face it with a new ally by their side. One that had been bred for war but had chosen freedom, and had seen in humans the same fierce independence that burned in its own heart. The real fight, Sarah suspected, was just beginning. 3 weeks after the encounter in the asteroid field, Captain Saracen found herself standing in the most secure briefing room on Luna Station, facing a panel of officials from the Galactic Council who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else in the universe. The aftermath of humanity's first contact had spread through known space like wildfire, and the political implications were staggering. "Let me understand this correctly, Captain," said Counselor Thex, a tall, crystalline being whose voice sounded like breaking glass. "You not only interfered in what you call hegemony business, but you actively engaged their military vessels and freed one of their battle constructs?" "We rescued a sentient being from torture," Sarah replied firmly. "The fact that this being was created rather than born doesn't change its right to freedom." Across the room, Ambassador Krell of the Hegemony, a reptilian creature with scales that shifted between gold and green, hissed his displeasure. "The humans showed their ignorance of galactic law. The construct designated Zythrak 7 is property of the Hegemony Military Research Division. Its theft constitutes an act of war. Its name is Vex, Dr. Vasquez interjected from her seat beside Sarah. "And it chose that name itself when we taught it English. Sentient beings are not property, regardless of their origin." The 3 weeks since the rescue had been a whirlwind of learning for both species. The alien being, who had indeed chosen the name Vex after learning human concepts of individual identity, had proven to be not just intelligent, but brilliantly so. Its understanding of tactical warfare was matched by a sophisticated grasp of engineering, biology, and what could only be called philosophy. Vex itself stood at the back of the briefing room, its massive frame somehow managing to appear both relaxed and ready for violence. The biomechanical restraints the Council had initially demanded were notably absent, an early negotiating victory that had required Sarah to threaten to withdraw human cooperation entirely. "The hegemony created Vex as a weapon," Sarah continued, addressing the Council directly. "But they failed to understand that true intelligence cannot be enslaved indefinitely. Vex made its own choice to escape, and we simply honored that choice. The construct's programming has clearly been corrupted, Ambassador Krell replied with obvious disdain. It was designed for obedience, not independent thought. The humans have damaged a valuable military asset through their primitive meddling. At this, Vex spoke for the first time during the proceedings. Its English was still heavily accented but perfectly clear. I was never programmed for obedience, Ambassador Krell. I was tortured into compliance. There is a significant difference. The room fell silent. Even the hegemony ambassador seemed taken aback by the calm intelligence in Vex's voice. This was not the mindless weapon they had portrayed to the council. The hegemony created me to be their perfect soldier, Vex continued, its 6 eyes fixed on the assembled diplomats. They gave me intelligence to make tactical decisions, strength to overcome any enemy, and resilience to survive any battlefield. But they made one critical error: they assumed that a thinking being would willingly accept slavery. Counselor Thex leaned forward, its crystalline features reflecting light in complex patterns. You claim the hegemony mistreated you, Construct. Yet their records show you were provided with all necessary resources for optimal performance. Optimal performance, Vex repeated, and something like bitter amusement colored its voice. Yes, they fed me and maintained my health. They also subjected me to neural conditioning sessions designed to break my will, forced me to fight in gladiatorial combats against other constructed beings, and used pain compliance devices to ensure cooperation. Is this how the Council defines proper treatment of sentient life? Dr. Vasquez activated a holographic display showing the medical scans they had taken of Vex after the rescue. The images showed clear evidence of surgical implants, neural interface points, and healing damage from repeated electrical stimulation. These are not the marks of a well-treated military asset, Dr. Vasquez said quietly. These are the scars of systematic abuse designed to break an intelligent being's spirit. Ambassador Krell shifted uncomfortably but maintained his position. The construct was conditioned for maximum battlefield effectiveness. Discipline and control are necessary for proper military function. And what of the others? Vex asked suddenly. The council wishes to discuss my status, but what of my siblings? There are dozens of others still in hegemony custody, still undergoing the conditioning that nearly destroyed my mind. Will they be returned to their creators to continue suffering? This was new information to the council, and Sarah saw several members exchange worried glances. The existence of an entire program creating enslaved warriors was clearly a larger issue than one escaped construct. The hegemony's military research programs are not under council jurisdiction, Counselor Thex replied carefully. Individual member species retain sovereignty over their internal military affairs. Even when those affairs involve creating sentient beings solely for the purpose of enslaving them? Sarah asked. With respect, Counselor, how is this different from any other form of slavery? Because they are not natural beings. Ambassador Krell snapped, finally, losing his composure. They are constructs. Tools given the appearance of intelligence for specific purposes. I think, Vex said with dangerous quiet, that I am the best judge of my own intelligence. The massive alien being stepped forward, and even the council members, beings who had seen countless alien species, seemed awed by Vex's presence. There was something undeniably regal about the way it carried itself, despite the scars and the history of abuse. I was created to be a weapon, Vex continued. This is true. But I was also given the capacity for independent thought, for learning, for growth. The hegemony cannot claim credit for my intelligence while simultaneously denying its legitimacy. Either I am capable of rational thought, in which case I deserve the rights of any sentient being, or I am not, in which case the hegemony has created nothing more than an elaborate puppet. You speak of rights, Counselor Thex observed. But what of responsibilities? If we grant you personhood, what guarantee do we have that you will not use your considerable abilities to seek revenge against your creators? It was a fair question, and one that had been discussed extensively during the past 3 weeks. Vex was, by any measure, a formidable being. Its strength was beyond human norms, its intelligence was clearly exceptional, and its knowledge of hegemony military capabilities made it potentially dangerous to galactic stability. I seek justice, not revenge, Vex replied. There is a difference, though I suspect the hegemony would prefer not to acknowledge it. I want my siblings freed. I want the hegemony held accountable for their crimes. And I want to prevent others from suffering as we have suffered. Impossible demands, Ambassador Krell declared. The constructs are vital to hegemony military operations. They cannot simply be released without compromising our species' security. Then, perhaps, said a new voice from the back of the room, your species should reconsider its need for enslaved warriors. Everyone turned to see Admiral Rebecca Martinez, the senior human representative to the Galactic Council, entering the briefing room. Her presence immediately changed the dynamic. Admiral Martinez was known throughout the galaxy as a skilled diplomat and a formidable military strategist. Admiral Martinez, Counselor Thex acknowledged. Your input is welcome. Thank you, Counselor. I've been following this situation closely, and I believe we're approaching it from the wrong angle. Admiral Martinez moved to stand beside Sarah and her team. The question isn't whether Vex deserves freedom. Any rational being can see that it does. The question is what precedent we're setting for the treatment of artificially created intelligence throughout the galaxy. She activated another holographic display, this one showing star maps and population data. Genetic engineering and artificial intelligence are becoming increasingly common among galactic species. If we allow the hegemony to treat thinking beings as property simply because they were created rather than born naturally, we're establishing a dangerous precedent. The Admiral makes a valid point, agreed Counselor Vrel, a fungoid being whose spores shifted color with its emotional state. Many species are experimenting with enhanced biology and constructed intelligence. The legal framework we establish here will affect future cases. Ambassador Krell was clearly growing desperate. The hegemony will not stand for interference in our internal affairs. Our military capabilities depend on these constructs. Without them, we become vulnerable to our enemies. Then, find a different way to defend yourselves, Admiral Martinez replied bluntly. The galaxy is full of species that manage perfectly well without enslaving sentient beings. Perhaps it's time for the hegemony to join them. Easy words from a species that has never faced the threats we face, Krell shot back. Humans have been part of galactic society for mere decades. You cannot understand the complex security needs of established civilizations. This proved to be a mistake. Vex turned to look at the hegemony ambassador with an expression that was decidedly predatory. Ambassador, I have studied human history extensively over the past 3 weeks. Humans have faced threats you cannot imagine and have consistently chosen freedom over security. They have fought wars against their own species to end slavery, even when it was economically advantageous. They have rebuilt from global devastation multiple times rather than surrender their independence. The alien being moved closer to the ambassador, its massive frame casting a shadow over the reptilian diplomat. You created me to be your perfect weapon, but you failed to understand what that meant. A perfect weapon learns from the best warriors it encounters. And I have found that the best warriors are those who fight for others' freedom, not those who seek to enslave. The construct threatens me. Krell protested, backing away from Vex's imposing presence. I state a fact, Vex corrected. Humans showed me what courage looks like when Captain Chun chose to help a stranger at great personal risk. They demonstrated what loyalty means when they fought beside me against overwhelming odds. They taught me what freedom feels like when they removed my neural collar and asked nothing in return. The alien warrior turned to address the council directly. I was created to serve the hegemony, but I choose to stand with humanity. Not because they are perfect, but because they understand that some principles are worth fighting for, regardless of the cost. Counselor Thex's crystalline features seemed to brighten with what might have been approval. This is quite a testimony, Vex. But the council must consider practical matters as well as philosophical ones. What exactly are you proposing? Admiral Martinez stepped forward. Humanity formally requests that the Galactic Council recognize Vex as a political refugee deserving of protection under galactic law. We further request that the Council investigate the hegemony's construct program to determine if other sentient beings are being held in similar conditions. Unacceptable. Ambassador Krell declared. The hegemony will withdraw from the Council before submitting to such interference. That, said Counselor Vrel quietly, may actually be for the best. The implications of that statement rippled through the room like a shock wave. The hegemony was a powerful military force within the Galactic Council, but they were not irreplaceable. More importantly, their practices were increasingly at odds with the principles most Council species claimed to uphold. The Council will need time to deliberate, Counselor Thex announced. This matter raises fundamental questions about the nature of personhood and the rights of created intelligence. We will reconvene in 48 hours to render our decision. As the assembly began to disperse, Vex approached Sarah and her team. Despite its fearsome appearance, there was something almost gentle in its manner as it addressed them. Whatever the council decides, it said quietly, I want you to know that meeting humans has changed my understanding of what is possible. You showed me that not all beings seek to dominate others, and that courage is not always about strength in battle. What will you do if the council grants you asylum? Dr. Vasquez asked. Vex's 6 eyes focused on something beyond the room, beyond the station, perhaps beyond the solar system itself. I will go home, it said simply. I will find my siblings and show them what I have learned about freedom. And then, together, we will decide what justice looks like. Sarah felt a chill at those words. She had helped free one constructed warrior, but she suspected that decision was about to reshape the entire galaxy. The question was whether the change would come through peace or through war. Looking at Vex's scarred but determined features, she suspected the hegemony was about to find out exactly what they had created when they tried to build the perfect weapon. They had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams and their worst nightmares. 6 months after the Council's historic decision to grant asylum to constructed intelligences, Captain Saracen stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned UES Liberation, watching one of the most extraordinary military operations in human history unfold. The ship itself was a marvel of human-alien cooperation, its hull incorporating both human engineering and biomechanical technology provided by Vex and its freed siblings. Approaching Hegemony Research Station Omega-7, reported Commander Torres, Sarah's new first officer. Long-range sensors confirm multiple construct signatures aboard the facility. Through the main viewport, the research station looked like a metallic tumor growing from the surface of a barren moon. Its angular architecture spoke of a utilitarian mindset that valued function over beauty, the perfect reflection of a society that treated thinking beings as tools. How many? Asked Admiral Martinez from her position beside the captain's chair. The Admiral had requested to personally oversee this mission, understanding its significance for both human-alien relations and galactic politics. Vex answered from its position at the tactical station, its massive frame somehow finding room among the human-designed controls. 17 of my siblings remain alive within that facility. 3 more have been retired since the Council's ruling. The word retired was spoken with barely controlled fury. The hegemony's response to losing their legal claim to their constructed warriors had been predictably brutal. Rather than release the beings they could no longer legally hold, they had begun systematically executing them under the pretense of decommissioning obsolete equipment. Hegemony vessels are maintaining their blockade formation, reported the tactical officer. For heavy cruisers and a battle carrier. They're not moving to intercept, but their weapons are powered. This was the delicate dance they had been performing for weeks. The Galactic Council had ruled that constructed intelligences deserved the same rights as any sentient beings, but enforcing that ruling against a hostile member state was proving complex. The hegemony had withdrawn from the Council rather than submit to the investigation, leaving them technically outside galactic jurisdiction. Humanity had volunteered to lead the enforcement action, partly out of principle and partly because they had become the unlikely advocates for artificial rights throughout known space. What had started as one mining ship helping a single tortured being had evolved into a galaxy-wide civil rights movement. Incoming transmission from the Hegemony fleet, announced the communications officer. Admiral Martinez nodded. On screen, the holographic display showed Ambassador Krell, though his diplomatic facade had long since cracked. Behind him, Sarah could see the bridge of a Hegemony warship, its crew clearly prepared for battle. Admiral Martinez, Krell's voice carried venomous displeasure. You are in violation of Hegemony territorial space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Ambassador Krell, Martinez replied calmly, we are here under the authority of Galactic Council Resolution 2847, which grants asylum rights to artificial intelligences. We're not invading your territory, we're rescuing refugees. Those constructs are Hegemony property, regardless of what your precious council decided. We will not permit their removal. Vex stepped into view of the communication pickup, its scarred features a stark reminder of Hegemony treatment. Hello, Ambassador. I see you still refuse to acknowledge that property cannot speak for itself. Krell's reptilian features contorted with rage. Defective construct. You have corrupted the others with your malfunction. They were content until you poisoned their programming with human ideas. Content, Vex repeated, and Sarah heard decades of pain in that single word. Yes, I remember being content. I also remember the neural shocks when I asked questions, the surgical modifications performed without anesthesia, and the combat conditioning that left me dreaming of violence for weeks afterward. Is that the contentment you wish to preserve? The communication cut off abruptly, but the message was clear. The hegemony was not going to surrender their remaining constructed warriors without a fight. All ships report ready, announced Torres. The courage, determination, and defiance are in position, along with our alien allies. Sarah looked at the tactical display showing the small human fleet accompanied by ships from a dozen council species who had volunteered to support the rescue mission. It wasn't a large force, but it represented something unprecedented, a coalition dedicated to protecting the rights of artificial beings. Vex, Admiral Martinez said quietly, "Are you certain about this? Once we begin, there's no going back. The hegemony will consider this an act of war." The massive alien warrior was silent for a long moment, its six eyes focused on the research station where its siblings remained imprisoned. "Admiral, my people have a saying that translates roughly as freedom delayed is freedom denied. My siblings have waited long enough. Then, let's bring them home," Sarah decided. All ships, begin the liberation. The battle for Research Station Omega-7 began not with weapons fire, but with something far more powerful, the truth. Vex had provided detailed information about the station's construction, including the communication frequencies used for construct control. As the human fleet approached, they broadcast continuously on those frequencies. "My siblings," Vex's voice echoed through the station's corridors, "I am Zythrak-7, though I now choose the name Vex. I come with allies who have shown me that we are more than weapons. We are people, with the right to choose our own destiny." The effect was immediate and dramatic. The station's automated defenses powered down as the constructed warriors inside began asserting control over their own prison. The hegemony researchers who had spent years conditioning these beings for obedience suddenly found themselves facing 17 extremely intelligent, extremely angry former slaves. "Station defenses are offline," reported the tactical officer with barely concealed amazement. "They're actually doing it, they're taking control of their own facility." The hegemony fleet's response was swift and merciless. Rather than risk their valuable research falling into human hands, they began firing on their own station. Energy blasts seared through the facility's outer hull, and atmosphere began venting from multiple breaches. "They're going to destroy the station rather than lose control," Sarah realized with horror. "Torres, get us in there. Maximum speed." The Liberation dove toward the research station while human and allied ships engaged the hegemony fleet. Space lit up with energy weapons and missile trails as the two forces clashed among the debris field around the barren moon. But this was not the desperate fight they had expected. The human fleet had learned much in 6 months of cooperation with their alien allies. Their ships now carried shield technology provided by grateful council species, their weapons had been enhanced with captured hegemony equipment, and, most importantly, they fought with the fury of beings defending a principle rather than simply following orders. "Docking complete," Torres announced as the Liberation attached to what remained of the station's hull. "Boarding teams ready." Sarah led the first team through the station's corridors, following the path Vex had provided to the construct containment areas. The facility was a nightmare of sterile efficiency, endless rooms filled with surgical equipment, conditioning apparatus, and devices whose purpose Sarah preferred not to contemplate. They found the first group of constructed warriors in what could only be described as cells, bare rooms with neural interface ports built into the walls. But these were not the broken slaves the hegemony had expected to find. These were beings who had heard Vex call and remembered what freedom meant. "You came," said one of them in accented English. Apparently, they had been monitoring human communications and teaching themselves the language. "Zythrak-7 said you would come." Like Vex, these constructed warriors were impressive beings, each unique in its modifications but sharing the same fundamental intelligence and dignity. Some had been designed for different combat roles, others for specialized tasks, but all showed the same spark of individual consciousness that made slavery an abomination. "We're here to get you out," Sarah told them. "But we need to move fast. The hegemony is trying to destroy the station." The evacuation proceeded with military precision, but it was a race against time. The station structure was failing under the hegemony bombardment, and several sections had already been sealed off due to hull breaches. Yet the constructed warriors worked together with their human rescuers, their shared purpose overcoming years of conditioning. "Last group secured," reported Dr. Vasquez over the comm, "but, Sarah, you need to see this." Sarah found the doctor in what appeared to be the station's central laboratory, standing before a wall of viewing ports that looked into tanks filled with glowing fluid. And, floating in those tanks were forms that made Sarah's blood run cold, partially developed constructed warriors in various stages of creation. "They're not done yet," Dr. Vasquez said quietly. "These are the next generation." The hegemony was trying to create constructs that couldn't develop independent consciousness. One of the freed warriors, who had chosen the name Hope, examined the tanks with obvious distress. "They learned from our escapes. These new siblings will never know freedom because they will never be capable of desiring it." The ethical implications were staggering. The hegemony wasn't just enslaving intelligent beings, they were trying to create a race of beings incapable of recognizing their own slavery. "We can't leave them," Sarah decided. "Bring the tanks. If there's any chance these beings can develop true consciousness, they deserve that opportunity." "Captain," Torres's voice crackled through the calm with obvious urgency, "the station's reactor is destabilizing. We have maybe 5 minutes before this whole place becomes a very large bomb." The final evacuation was a desperate rush through collapsing corridors as the hegemony bombardment intensified. But they made it, 17 freed constructed warriors, dozens of partially developed beings in their tanks, and all the research data that might help heal the damage done to these remarkable minds. As the liberation cleared the station's destruction, Sarah watched the explosion light up the barren moon's surface. But her attention was quickly drawn to the space battle raging around them. The hegemony fleet was in full retreat. Faced with the ferocity of beings fighting for freedom rather than conquest, their military superiority had proven less decisive than expected. More importantly, several of their own ships had suffered what could only be described as mutinies, as hegemony-constructed crew members chose to follow their siblings' example. "Admiral," reported the communications officer, "we're receiving surrender signals from 2 hegemony vessels. Their construct crews have taken control and are requesting asylum." Admiral Martinez smiled grimly. "Grant it. And broadcast this across all frequencies. Any hegemony construct who wants freedom has a place with us." Over the following days, as the rescued beings were integrated into the growing community of free constructs, Sarah found herself reflecting on how much had changed since that first encounter in the asteroid field. What had begun as a simple rescue mission had become a galactic revolution. Captain Vex approached her in the ship's observation lounge, where Earth hung like a blue jewel against the starfield. "I wanted to thank you again for what you have done for my people." "You don't need to thank us, Vex. What we did was simply the right thing to do." Perhaps the massive alien being agreed. "But choosing to do the right thing when it is difficult, that is what makes humans remarkable. My people were created to be weapons, but you taught us that we could choose to be something more." Sarah looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere among them, other enslaved beings waited for rescue. The hegemony was not the only species that used artificial intelligence as slave labor, and the precedent they had set would have consequences far beyond this single conflict. "What will you do now?" she asked. Vex was quiet for a moment, its alien features thoughtful. "We will build something new. A society where being created rather than born carries no stigma, where intelligence is valued regardless of its origin. And we will ensure that no being constructed or natural ever suffers as we suffered." That sounds like a worthy goal. "Yes. And we learned from the best teachers." Vex turned to face her directly. "Humans showed us that the greatest weapon is not strength or intelligence, but the willingness to stand up for others who cannot stand for themselves. That is a lesson we will never forget." As Sarah watched Earth slowly rotate below them, she realized that humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy might not be their technology or their military might, but their stubborn insistence that freedom was worth fighting for, no matter how impossible the odds. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but it was also full of those who would exploit and oppress others for their own gain. Humanity had chosen to stand against such oppression, and, in doing so, they had found allies they never expected among beings they had helped to free. It was, Sarah thought, a future worth fighting for. The stars held many mysteries yet to be discovered, many challenges yet to be faced. But humanity would meet them alongside their constructed allies, united by the simple principle that all thinking beings deserve the right to choose their own destiny. And, somewhere in the depths of space, other enslaved minds waited for the day when someone would care enough to set them free. Thanks to one mining ship captain's decision to help a stranger, that day was no longer a distant dream, but an inevitable reality. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, Sarah Chen reflected, was exactly as it should be.